by Samuel Adams, part of Happy Hour.
It's time for toss-up. Caesars has me as the betting favorite once again. What's first?
Toss-up, who should Boston miss more, Tom Brady or Mookie Betts?
Well, there's no question that Tom Brady accomplished more in Boston than Mookie Betts. He won 6 Super Bowls. Nobody's going to do that again. Mookie Betts won 1 World Series. And I think the people in Boston at this point are even rooting for Tom Brady to do well this year because they've liked him over such a long period of time. But, and here's the big but, letting Mookie Betts go was catastrophically stupid.
It was.
Just for money. Because the next 10 years with the Dodgers, a team that has money and spends money, he could be there in October. And every single time he's there in October, it's a slap in the face of the ownership and the management of the Red Sox.
Tony, I agree with every word you said. But I'm going back to the beginning. Tom Brady, nobody's ever going to win that. Not in the lifetimes of people who are now entertaining this question in New England, who are part of Pat's Nation. The answer is Tom Brady. And look, I guess it could be analogized to saying, who would you miss more if you were the Yankees franchise? The Yankees franchise, Babe Ruth or Aaron Judge? Yes, I know one guy is current and can do more, but it's Babe F. Ruth. Who do I miss more? Michael Jordan, retired and gone, or somebody who might come in and be spectacular for a couple of years and might win one? No, the answer is the icon. The answer is the person that you're never going to see his like again.
That's exactly right. But he's not going to be right in your face for the next 10 years like Mookie Betts is possibly going to be. Next.
Toss up. Which coach would you like on Sunday? Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh?
So my answer to this is, Wilbon, I'll let you pick the one you want and I'll happily take the other one.
That's right.
Because they're both terrific. Mike Tomlin has had no losing seasons. John Harbaugh has had 1 losing season. Tomlin has a 65% winning percentage. Harbaugh has 62%. Each has won a Super Bowl. Tomlin has been to 2 Super Bowls. I mean, Tomlin's been luckier in the sense he's had Roethlisberger the whole way. But Harbaugh has a guy who won a Super Bowl for him in Flacco, and he's got the MVP in Lamar Jackson. I mean, if I had to choose, and you know you've heard me say this for many years, Tomlin is such a good quote that I would probably choose Tomlin.
That'd be great as a sports writer, but, you know, that's over for you now. Let me just mention, Tony, the reason why we're talking about this is these 2 guys are meeting for the 25th time as opposing head coaches. I mean, nobody's met that many times. Now, in the Super Bowl era, if we go back, obviously, Hallis v. Lambeau is something that happened much more often, like nearly twice as much. I think 48 times they met. But currently, Super Bowl era, these 2 guys, Tony, I wouldn't even want the first pick. I wouldn't want the pressure of it. I'd just say, Tony, take the first pick. I'm going to take the other guy happily, right? And you would take them probably for another few years and almost other than Belichick over everybody else. Andy Reid would be in the discussion. Everybody else playing.
And both of them were surprise hires, and both of them have benefited by stable organizations. That's it. Let's take one last break. Still to come, the Giants and the Chargers send players home after positive tests.
Cam Newton may be without one of his big weapons for a while, and he can't afford to miss any weapons, can he?
By the way,
responsibly.
Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. The White Sox hired Tony La Russa.
I'm Tony Kornheiser. You know who's furious?
Who?
Whitey Herzog. He's furious.
You know, when I heard the La Russa news, it made me start thinking about managers of my youth. And a lot of them are gone now. Think about Leo DeRocher, who managed the Cubs when I was a kid. So I think about Walter Alston and Al Lopez and Sparky Anderson and all these guys. Tony La Russa, 76.
Yeah, but you know what?
What?
Tommy Lasorda is still with us.
Lasorda, yes, he is.
And Whitey Herzog is still with us.
us.
And Bill Verdon is apparently still with us, and I wouldn't have known that. Good for them. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, baseball considers punishing Justin Turner. NBA players push back on a December start. And we got some Falcons football on Thursday night.
God help us.
But we begin today with the Chicago White Sox indeed hiring Tony La Russa to be their manager. La Russa is 76 years old, and he last managed in 2011 when he won the World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals. The White Sox are a young, improving team that made the playoffs this year and then fired Rick Renteria afterwards. Wilbon, this is your city. I know you're a Cubs guy, but it's your city. Do you like this hire?
You know, Tony, I do. I mean, I realize, you can be old and you can reminisce and you can say, oh, wonder, what about the good old days? I mean, the Bulls hired somebody. Maybe Phil Jackson's available. Tony La Russa's uniform is waiting. The White Sox wear those uniforms that people said look like softball uniforms with the horizontal stripes. They wear them on Sunday, at least at home on Sunday. Tony La Russa was in those. And, Tony, I guess what the White Sox are thinking, and Jerry Reinsdorf specifically, who really regretted his general manager later firing Tony La Russa because they had success with him, I guess what he's thinking is we got these young guys, and they need a firm senior hand. They need somebody with some experience to guide them and get the best out of them. Is it a gamble? Yeah, but everything's a gamble when you hire a coach or a manager. So is this more extreme than that? I don't know.
So the headline, of course, is that La Russa is 76 years old. And Jeff Passan of ESPN is reporting that it has ruffled some feathers within the White Sox organization, and some employees are afraid that he will not be able to connect to younger players. And I'm saying this as somebody in my 70s. That when you work around younger people, which I don't in my attic, but I do if I ever get back to the studio, when you work around younger people, it keeps you a lot more current. You are open to more things than if you are only around people your own age. I mean, the two guys running for president right now, one of them's 74, one of them's 77. I think that's a harder job than managing the White Sox. So I think I'm rooting for Tony La Russa in this particular regard. And I've heard the same things you have about Reinsdorf, that is his big regret.
Yeah.
That they fired La Russa, then he won in Oakland, then he won in St. Louis, and Reinsdorf wants to complete the circle and bring him back.
Tony, it's fascinating. It's going to be worth watching like all the time and every day. And so those 9 years, like how far has baseball evolved in 9 years from 2000 to 11? I don't think Tony La Russa would be removing a pitcher who'd given up 2 singles if he was in the World Series. All right, I don't think Tony La Russa would do that. But how much has the game evolved, and how much does La Russa have to evolve to stay current, as you said, and to gain the trust of those younger players and bench coaches and bullpen people? What does he have to do? Or does he already have it because he's Tony La Russa?
It's a good team, so it's sort of risky because they're on the trajectory up.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, but it makes it very interesting to watch. I went to a dinner with him a couple of years ago, sat at the table with him, thought he was brilliant, totally brilliant.
'Cause he is.
So I'm happy for the move.
Yeah.
Happy for the move. We move now, we stay with baseball, but we move now to baseball's unhappiness with Justin Turner, which stems from Turner returning to the field for the post-game celebration, even though baseball officials specifically told him to stay in the clubhouse. And once on the field, they tried to get him to return inside. Turner had tested positive for coronavirus and at times pulled his mask down while on the field. Wilbon, what should baseball do to Turner?
Tony, this is hard, and I hate to suggest a sliding scale, but I think that may have to be the case. And Uber producer Matt Kelleher suggested to me this morning, he said, this could be like a hockey, like an NHL situation, where if somebody suffers a broken jaw, the offending party's out for like 3 weeks. If it's just, he missed a day, then you bring him back. Part of me doesn't want to accept that, but it seems reasonable and logical. And if there are no consequences suffered by other people on that field when he was out there taking his mask off, if there are no consequences, I find it hard to say throw the book at him. But if there are, Tony, I wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah. So I've had 24 hours to think about this, and I was too easy and too equivocal on this yesterday because I found out a couple of things I didn't realize. One is that he's the player rep. That means he wrote the protocols. He sold the protocols to the guys on his team, and then he deliberately defied. That makes it worse for me. He deliberately defied those protocols that he was involved in. And the other is that he's a free agent, and I wonder, did he say to himself, well, I'm not going to be back here anyway, so I'm just going to enjoy this to the degree that I can. I understand why the players want him out there, and I want to draw this distinction. There's an inherent risk for all players and everybody in the dugout during these times. Because very few people, the players aren't wearing masks in there. And he had this in the first inning and the third inning and the fifth inning along with the eighth inning, right? But they willingly take that risk. Who I don't think willingly takes that risk are the families on the field and the staff people on the field. And so I'm torn on this one as you are.
Yeah, Tony, the players, I can understand why. If you're a player and you say, wait a minute, I just spent all day, I was at the cage with Turner. We were in the dugout together and nobody had a mask on. And so why am I going to feel differently an hour and a half later? And I can see why players would say, no, stop it. But again, it's the other people that didn't sign on for this that Turner could have put in danger. And that's what you have to assess. And is it result-based? Tony, it could be. Maybe it even should be.
I'll tell you this, Mike. In hindsight, I think baseball's very lucky that went 6 and the World Series was over. Because the next day, what if a bunch of people tested positive and they couldn't even play Game 7? They couldn't, and that's a possibility. We're never going to know that because we're not looking back at that.
But, Tony, if there was a Game 7, he wouldn't have been out there celebrating. So I think...
I understand,
I think it's a moot point, but...
But as you say, in the dugout, everybody's exposed. All the players are
used to each other. They are.
And willingly.
That's right. We may not be getting the NBA for Christmas after all, Tone. Chris Haynes of Yahoo reports a substantial faction of players, including stars, is pushing instead for January 18, Martin Luther King Day. The NBA estimates that the December start would be worth $500 million more to the league than a mid-January start. So, Tone, where do you see this ending up?
Yeah, I mean, I love these reports. I just wish somebody would tell me the names of all the players and all the stars that don't want to play. I mean, we assume LeBron because Danny Green said so, but how many others? I'd like to get some names. I'm going to quote Don Ohlmeyer. It's my favorite quote of all time. The answer to all your questions is money. If you read what Michelle Roberts said, basically what she's saying is, what are you going to give us if we agree to start on December 22nd?
Right.
And I think that's the critical issue here. What is the give back?
Tony, I agree. But again, let's start with the answer to all your questions is money. What about the $500 million? That's $250 million each. And if you start dividing that up among the $250 million for the players, and I know people like LeBron don't even care about the average, because the average of that for 450 players would be about $500-some thousand, just less than $600,000 per person on average. Obviously, LeBron's amount would be much more than that, and it still wouldn't be anything to him. But, Tony, I think as I try to listen to what players are talking about, first of all, this is very new. There hasn't been an official player/union response to this yet. Not yet.
That's right.
There will have to be one, and players are going to have to sit and think, okay, what am I assessing here? How much money does it mean, yes, to me, not to the union, to me personally? And am I ready to play? What's the physical risk involved? And the owners have to look and say, okay, Tony, the $500 million becomes more real when you look at all the revenue streams that won't be in effect, like ticket sales and parking lot fees and hot dogs sold and jerseys sold in arena. Those things aren't going to be there because there are not going to be any fans for the beginning of the season, maybe all of it.
Yeah. Well, let me get to this. If I played on Miami and I played on the Lakers, I wouldn't want to play. It's too soon.
Agree.
Maybe if I played on Boston, maybe if I played on Denver, I wouldn't want to play. But this is worth talking about. 8 teams haven't played.
For me, and as the Steelers, and